all. Welcome to your final breakout session. My name is Terrell Maxwell, and I'm with Union Pacific Company, and I am responsible for agreement negotiations and conflict resolution in our labor relations department. And this year, I had the first time pleasure to be a part of the Code Conference Planning Committee. I am here today with my colleagues Sean, Jesse, and Donna. We will do our best to ensure this session runs smoothly. But before I turn it over to this session speaker, I want to refer back to our housekeeping and technical recommendations. The full details are on your screen and will optimize your experience with us. Remember to engage with others in the chat, place questions for the speakers in the chat, avoid distractions and offer grace, humor, and keep an open mind. With that being said, I am excited to introduce our speakers. RISE is a nonprofit organization that works with individuals who are re-entering the community from prison. 50% of RISE staff have experienced contact with the justice system and provide real-world insight into what inclusion means to them. People with criminal histories are often left out of the conversation of DEI, and this has resulted in further marginalization in situations of employment, public services, housing, and other basic needs. With their many successes, Erica, Eduardo, Demetrius, and Jasmine are excited to talk with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, you are up. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for joining us for this breakout session, Second Chances, including people with criminal histories. My name is Erica Raetz, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of Reentry at RISE, and I look forward to not only giving each of you some insight into the work that RISE does, but also the importance of inclusion of people with criminal backgrounds in all spaces. So just as a quick introduction to RISE, RISE is a nonprofit organization whose mission is for all people to find freedom from cycles of incarceration. We provide a 6-month program in 5 Nebraska Department of Correctional facilities focused on 3 different things: character development, job readiness, and entrepreneurship. Once someone has graduated from our in-prison program, they are then eligible to receive reentry services from our RISE reentry team. We then provide reentry planning, which includes case management, peer support, housing support, referrals for mental and physical health, substance abuse support, transportation assistance, family reunification, and employment assistance, just to name a few. A few notes to keep in mind before we start this panel discussion. Nearly 1 in 3 Americans of the adult working population has a criminal record of some kind. More now than ever, it is important for employers to address these barriers that may keep people who have criminal backgrounds from becoming employed. Also to note, RISE likes to use people-first language and encourages you to do the same while you're asking questions. So we don't use words such as inmate, felon, or other non-people-first language. We encourage you to use terms such as person with a felony or a person with a criminal history. RISE also refers to our program participants, people who are either currently in our in-prison program or who have graduated from our in-prison program and are now living in the community, as builders. We use the term builders because these individuals are building their personal brand, they're rebuilding their lives, they're building their businesses. So you'll likely hear throughout this panel that we are using the term builder to refer to people who are either in our program or who have graduated from our program. RISE uses people-first language and also uses the term builder because we work for people to be seen for who they are right now today, not who they were in their past. I'll pause to pose a question to each of y'all before we get started. How would each of you like to be known for the worst thing that you have ever done? Have you ever cheated on a test? Have you ever gotten behind the wheel of a car after one too many drinks? How would you like to only be known every time you apply for a job, every time you are looking to rent a new apartment, to get to know someone in a social setting, that one of the first things that you feel the need to disclose is the worst thing that you've ever done? So I'd like to ask you to keep that in the front of your mind today as we walk through this panel together. I'd like to quickly introduce each of the panelists today. First up is Jasmine Harris. Jasmine brings 12 plus years of experience to RISE that includes nonprofit program management, community engagement, and coalition building. Most recently, Jasmine served as the co-founder and CEO of Waymaker LLC, an organization that motivates women and girls to overcome setbacks from being involved in the criminal justice system. She also served as a health educator at Creighton University as a civic engagement committee chair for the Urban League of Nebraska Young Professionals, where she focused on advocacy and awareness around criminal justice issues. Jasmine received a Bachelor of Biology from the University of Nebraska at Omaha and a Master's of Public Health from the University of Nebraska Medical Center. In 2017, Jasmine was awarded the Omaha NAACP Freedom Fighter Award and was named one of the 10 Outstanding Young Omahans, or TOYO Award, by the Omaha JCs. She also received a 2020 Greater Chamber of Omaha Young Professionals Changemaker Award and was a 2021 candidate for Mayor of Omaha. Thank you, Jasmine, for spending your time with us today. Next up, we have Demetrius Gatson. Demetrius, also known as Didi, has found her most fulfilling positions through helping others. She is an excellent communicator and relationship builder, which suits her previous position as a welding instructor for the trade program in Lincoln and a peer support specialist with the Mental Health Association of Nebraska. Demetrius currently facilitates WRAP, which is also known as Wellness and Recovery Action Plan, classes at the Hanu Home in Lincoln, and is a real dog lover. She began training dogs while incarcerated in Nebraska and uses the skills she learned in that role to this day with her own 3 dogs. Is it still 3, Didi? In addition to earning a degree in business administration from the University of Nebraska at Kearney, Didi is a 2021 graduate of Southeast Community College, majoring in human services with an emphasis in prison reform and reentry. She is currently enrolled at UNO, where she will receive her master's in social work and criminology. In her free time, she facilitates teacher trainings in women's prisons across the United States for Dance to Be Free. Demetrius is currently a RISE reentry specialist, working with builders associated with the Nebraska State Penitentiary, Lincoln Correctional Center, and the Community Correctional Center in Lincoln. Thank you, Didi, for being with us today. And last but not least, we have Eduardo. Eduardo Gardea has already experienced years of addiction and incarceration by the age of 20. The years that followed placed him in various types of employment, which helped him develop the communication and workforce navigation skills he possesses now. Prior to his work at RISE, Eduardo received his bachelor's degree in business administration and devoted his efforts to assisting people with severe mental health challenges and substance abuse at Centerpoint's Dual Diagnosis Treatment Center. Eduardo has since become a peer support specialist who is certified. He serves as a board member of Second Mile Transitional Home, has developed the employment program, and is the employment specialist with RISE. He has navigated the workforce and life's challenges as a person who has been impacted by the criminal justice system. And now he uses his own lived experience to assist formerly incarcerated individuals in finding meaningful employment. Thank you all for being with us today. I'm excited to hear from each of your perspectives, all of the importance that this topic really brings to different aspects of people's lives. So if we could start off really quickly, and I'll direct this to whoever wants to take this first. If each of you wouldn't mind giving the audience a bit of background on why second chance hiring is important to you, either personally or professionally.
I can speak a little bit on that one, Erica. From a personal perspective, when I was initially released and attempting to place one foot in front of the other and advance just as a young person in my life, one of the ways I was able to do so was because I was always employed. And I know that sounds kind of counterproductive to what we're here presenting, but one of the challenges was that for many years I was working in industries and positions that I truly detested. And that was fine because I felt like I needed to do what I was supposed to be doing for the moment. But I wasn't earning enough because companies with higher wages or better to me positions just wouldn't hire me despite offering me countless positions in the interviewing process. So I became really good at budgeting. down to my last dollar many times. And there were many, many years where I made $12,000 a year as a full-time employee. And one of the reasons I was able to improve my life was because I'm in a single person household. And so I often reflect back to the question, how is someone supposed to make it if they have a partner, if they have children, if they're paying into child support or get into an accident? Being able to actually attain meaningful, high wage, high skill employment not only saves our lives, but just begins to provide the boots with the straps we're supposed to use to pull ourselves up.
Feeding off of Eduardo, I would like to say that personally, being able to obtain employment as a person who's been previously incarcerated is actually very, very hard. And the reason why it's super important to me is because you have to have some type of a foundation. You have to be able to lay your foundation out to say, okay, I'm going to take these steps to move forward. There has to be someone out there that will give me a chance. Being able to get your foot in the door and working, like Eduardo said, those jobs that you just detest, you have to be able to put your foot in the door and step on that foundation to be able to take the next step forward, the next step up. If you can't do that, how are you supposed to move forward? And like Eduardo said, people who have children, who have spouses, sometimes even parents that they're caring for, where they're supposed to get their foot into the door. So it's super important to me because we have to be able to have that future, that outlook. If you can't see the future, where are you going? And so you don't know where you're going. And it's just important to me that they are given that chance to actually see the end of the tunnel, to see the light, so that they can say, okay, there is something for me. I just have to keep going. They wouldn't have aspirations and dreams.
For me, it started off personally. As I was growing up, I made some bad decisions, which traveled into young adulthood, which led to more bad decisions, right? And there was a point in my life where I had a misdemeanor conviction that kept me out of work for almost 2 years. And as Dee Dee and Eduardo referred to, I had a young son. So how am I supposed to provide for my son at this moment? And I couldn't get work because of a misdemeanor conviction. And looking from that standpoint, I tell people I started advocating before I knew what advocating was, because I had to advocate for myself. Because I didn't have a felony conviction or a drug conviction, I was like, okay, let me go back to school and get a work study position. That's what I ended up having to do to get a job to provide for my son. And as I went through my experiences, my work, school, all that, I turned my voice for others and saying, hey, we need to do something about this. And what that leads into, what realm can we make an impact in the community, in the policy level? How do we start impacting these systems that keep people down? Because what you hear a lot is, oh, well, you did it. Oh, well, that person did it. We are exceptions because majority of people can't. And in this work, we see a lot, as Eduardo was saying, jobs that people detest, what we call them are survivor jobs. And it's not even necessarily that you're able to survive, you're getting some of the basics met. So for me, it's important because I went through it with the misdemeanor. So we have to look at not only are people with felony convictions impacted, there are some people with misdemeanors who are being impacted as well. And how do we then impact these systems to where that changes? How do we look at it from the law standpoint? How do we look at it from an employer standpoint? Because that way we start ensuring that more people have these opportunities. Because sometimes what kept us all going was that innate ability to say, I have to make it. And sometimes people don't have that. And if they can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, it gets real dark real fast and they give up. So we have to start making those lights shine brighter.
Thank you all for all of your answers. Jasmine, in that vein, because you are our director of public policy and advocacy, and also just your passion for systems and understanding how they actually impact people directly. Will you speak a little bit about what are some of the specific policy challenges that people face when they're applying for different jobs with some sort of criminal history?
So when I tell people policy, we have to look at big P's and little P's. Big policy meaning your laws and ordinances. Small P policy meaning internal hiring practices. And what are your processes and procedures when you're hiring people internally that keep them from getting that job? And what we see people facing, one, when you talk about a big policy that advocates have been pushing for, is pushing down later in the hiring process when you ask someone about their background. Taking that off an application, because at the beginning of an application process, does it really matter that someone 20 years ago has something on their record? Because you don't give a time limit on when. Because a lot of applications I used to fill out said 20, go back 20 years in your history. What does that do for me now? As I say, we're looking at what are people doing today. So those are some of those kind of policy things that we face right there. Another one you can look at from an internal standpoint is blanketed policies within a business where we don't hire anyone with a felony background. Those are policies that people can look at on their internal hiring processes of how do we take away these barriers. So that's just to name a couple of them.
Thank you, Jasmine. Eduardo, would you mind speaking a little bit more specifically to barriers that people who are either applying for jobs or employers are faced with when looking at applications of people who may have some sort of criminal record?
Absolutely. You know, I understand employers want to protect their company. Employers oftentimes fear the public finding out they hire the formerly incarcerated, damaging the company's reputation and possibly losing business. If they hire a person with a felony background who causes a problem on the job, it could be viewed as negligent hiring. This might allow safety factors at work to place the business at risk and jeopardize their standing in the public. So that's an internal employer barrier. But one of the challenges people face when applying for jobs is, with a felony background, is the very real issue of stereotyping. Once a felon, always a felon mentality. These employers believe that a person with a felony background can't change and will always resort back to a crime at some point. Which kind of goes against the belief, because if we believe as a community that people who have committed crimes should pay their dues by going to prison in the first place, we believe that they have transformed when they're released. And by going to prison, people should have the opportunities when they're released, but they oftentimes don't. Oftentimes just doing your prison sentence is just the beginning of a very long, challenging journey. This particular challenge comes up in the application screening process as well as in the interviewing process, where the interview can lack empathetic interviewing, which is meant to get to the bottom of differences and not override them and dismiss people. It's challenging to navigate where people apply because not all employers make public that they're background friendly. This leads to the applicant submitting a high amount of applications, hoping for a couple of callbacks and then hoping that a company who called for an interview is background friendly. And if the company is not background friendly, or an applicant, for whatever reason doesn't get the job, the process starts all over again. Which doesn't sound too bad, but there's a tremendous amount of rejection, a tremendous amount of dead ends when applying for jobs with a felony background. So kind of going back to what Jasmine stated, we're the exceptions. And for many people, it's a never-ending cycle of submitting a high volume number of applications, hoping that one of them will land.
Thanks, Eduardo. Didi, do you have anything else to add to that?
Well, mostly just the fact that there's like so many roadblocks to obtaining employment once you are released from incarceration. This does make it difficult, as everyone has already mentioned, of course. But what a lot of people aren't mentioning is that you're not giving back to society when you have all these hindrances. And so then you begin to get in a slump and you begin to feel, well, really, what am I doing? And so often you find many people who go right back to where they were because this is what they know. However, when they find that one employer that maybe it's not the best job, but when they do find that employer that says, okay, I'm gonna give you that one chance, they work very hard. They work very hard to say, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to give them all I got because maybe possibly I can move up. How we as a society can then begin to feed into not only their self-esteem, but feed into their future is to say, okay, I see you're trying. Let me give you that next door, networking with them, working with them, not a handout, but a hand up. Learning and giving them that chance to say, okay, I can build you. I can show you how. It's just like the whole, what is it? The whole saying of teach them how to fish, then they can eat for a lifetime. If you teach them how, they will continue to forever feed off of that.
That's great. Thank you, Dee Dee. So we've had kind of some conversation about the negatives about hiring and the barriers that people face, obstacles that we're often seeing our people once they're getting out of prison face. I would love to know a little bit more about how employers can create a culture that is positive. What's a culture that someone with a criminal history can step into and say, I not only feel safe here, but I feel welcomed here. I feel like I fit in here, that I belong here.
For me, it's about intentionality. When we talk about DEI work, we say inclusivity, we say diversifying your workforce, and everybody's minds always jump to race and gender when we talk about diversifying our workforce. We have to start including people who have lived experiences that have been impacted by these systems. Because as Dee Dee said, once you're leaving people out, like, how do we bring them back in? How do we make them feel a part of society? Because I think it's 80% of people who were released from a correctional facility who got into trouble again, didn't have a home or didn't have employment. These are big numbers. These are the basic things that we can provide for people. So even that in itself, having someone have a job, that starts bringing up their self-esteem, right? Their confidence. And I have this job that I can work because someone gave me an opportunity. Majority of the people who do get that opportunity are going to work their butts off to ensure that that job gets done. That helps bolster culture right there. The lived experience piece brings in that diversity of thought, brings in that diversity of different experiences, which enriches. I don't know all the exact numbers, but we know when you have that diversification of thought, that diversification of experience, that bolsters up the organization's productivity, just, all around environment. And we have to ensure that we didn't just bring them in because we're checking boxes, right? But we hire somebody that has criminal histories. But it's that belonging piece that now comes along with DEI that a lot of people aren't really necessarily starting to address. It's like in our introduction, we talked about 50% of our staff have been impacted by the criminal justice system, whether they were incarcerated, whether they have someone in their family who's incarcerated, whatever that may look like. But I can tell you right now, everyone on that staff feels like they belong because we include them in the processes. We include them in decision-making. We have a leadership team, but we run those ideas down to everyone so they know that they were a part of what the final product was. So it's all about that belonging piece too.
I don't believe that I could have said it any better, Jasmine. But I did want to add that being able to be a part of the decision-making is not the only thing. What's so more is just saying, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? Boasting your culture up with someone who is previously incarcerated and saying, hey, you know, we had this question with the leadership team. We really didn't know how everyone will feel about it. And just asking that question gives the person who is previously incarcerated a chance to say, you know what, I think they care. And just putting that thought in their mind gives them a chance to say, I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to ride this out because they believe in me. They trust me, and I'm going to show them that I can do it. Then you begin to, again, boost self-esteem. You begin to boost their hopes and their dreams to say, you know what, this organization believes in me. I'm going to keep working with them. I'm going to keep striving for what's the next thing? What's the next step for me? And then having that open door policy is huge, because whether it's a very small problem or it's really huge, having an open door policy and having a person to be able to go to anyone on their team or another team or higher ups, and no matter what their background is, that allows them to say, I can talk to anyone and I feel safe. That is a culture that anyone will want to be a part of, but especially someone with a background.
Those are all so insightful and helpful answers, Jasmine and Dee Dee. Thank you for that. Eduardo, I would love to hear from you specifics that you have seen as Rise's employment specialist, specific action items or things that you have seen employers do that have made people who we have sent to those employers feel comfortable, welcome, and like they belong.
Great question. One particular employer comes to mind. They know their population. They know who they're hiring. Not only specific to the reentry population, but greater. Just they know their people very well. And if I could spin off of what Jasmine and Dee Dee have said, it's very people focused. I think any person, regardless of a criminal background or not, wants to feel like they belong. They want to feel like they want to be seen. They want to feel heard. And this particular employer has done an amazing job of creating a safe space, for one, where employees feel welcome to bring up issues. The majority of the time, workplace issues are not related to the workplace at all. They're issues outside of the workplace. They're at home. It's finances. It's everything in their personal life. And you have to, so often we've had to shut those off when we go to work. So this particular employer has done an excellent job of creating a safe space. They know that some of their employees are in recovery. They host their own recovery meetings. They host their own AA meetings, their own NA meetings. They have gratitude meetings. They are intentional about meeting weekly just to get anything that needs to be out in the open. They don't believe in this idea of you're at work, only focus on work and leave your home life at home. I think if COVID especially has taught us anything, is that those, both of those things are intertwined. And this employer does an excellent job of making sure that if there's a healthy work life, you're going to have a healthy home life. That's just one of the ways.
That's awesome. Thank you, Eduardo. So we've talked a lot about kind of those steps that people are taking in making people feel included, welcomed. Where do employers go to hire people with criminal histories? Where do employers look? How do they recruit? What does that look like for employers? Eduardo, since you are employment guru on staff, I'll toss that one to you.
Absolutely. And my initial thought was, at least in the past, is they don't go out there. It's us as a person with a criminal background that has to go out and find them. We're the ones hunting for job leads. We're the ones hunting for organizations that are, like myself, making relationships with employers in the community and trying to gather this list for people, because employers are not going out there looking for people with criminal backgrounds. And that actually leads into kind of another issue, right? It's the idea of, for so long, the narrative has been placed on what can the person with a criminal background do to improve their situation? Is it learning a skill? Dee Dee's, I'll let Dee Dee talk on the skills that she learned at the Trade Center and everything she learned there, but it's this narrative of what can we do to improve ourselves through character development courses, higher education, learning a skill, and sort of presenting ourselves in this new great transformative light to an employer. But if we believe that, we're a part of this community, employers want to be intentional about DEI efforts, employers need to ask themselves, what can we do? We're a part of this community too. What are we doing to attract these people to our employers?
I agree 100%, Eduardo. When the question was asked, and I was waiting for you, since you're the employment specialist, I was like, you look in your applicant pool because they're going to be there. One of the policies that you should probably look at with your hiring process is the beginning, when people are filling out these online applications, what keywords do you have in there that is automatically kicking people out? Is there something within that process? Do you have someone actually going through and looking at them, or do you just get so many, you're like, well, this has to be automated? Because that automation is going to cancel out a lot of people. Because if you have something in there where you're looking at a gap in work history, people have been incarcerated for 5, 10, 15 years, there's going to be a gap in work history. At Rise, what we do with the resumes is we also tell them, put down that experience and skill set that you learned while you were incarcerated. So that way it doesn't look as much as of a gap. And that gives you an opportunity to talk to the employer about the situation. So it's really looking at your process there to get people in the door.
As Eduardo mentioned, the employers don't look. They just don't. You see inside of different institutions, as well as like the Work Release Center, you see these staffing agencies that go in there and they host these hiring fairs and they speak with them. Oh yeah, we'll hire you. Well, they're hiring at $18 for a welder, where welders get paid $25. But because they're incarcerated, so that's where I'm going to go. I can weld. I'm going to go there because that's where I know I can work. What employers should do is, like Jasmine said, look into their application pool. Also, they need to be more intentional about looking and saying, no, I don't want to know about any felony. I want to know about what is your experience, what can you do, how well can you do it? If there's an aptitude test, can you take this test and pass it? Not what was your past. Me personally, as Eduardo said, I knew there was something I wanted to do. There was something better that I could do with myself and not just be incarcerated. So I did hit the ground running. I went straight to the Work Release Center and learned how to weld. After I learned how to weld, I went right to a job. I became a welder. It was awesome. When I broke my foot, I was down and out. I had no idea what I was going to do for myself. I was getting ready to be released. What was I going to do? I went right back to where I learned and said, can you guys help me? Being an employer, and like I said, having that open door and saying, someone to be able to come to you and say, I don't know what to do. Can you give me not just a chance, but can you tell me where I can go? And they hired me as a welding instructor because I showed effort. I showed that I was good at it. And I love that job. I was not only able to teach others what I knew and what I learned at this place, but I was also able to tell my story and say, you can do it too. But you have to have the will and the strength. That was and I worked for the company. So that was being an open door, having that open door policy, being able to have students come to me and say, you know what? I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I'm getting ready to be released. Where can I go? I have that experience for them. That was them feeding into my lived experience. It wasn't the education, and it wasn't so much, oh, she's just an awesome welder. It was also, she has this story that's going to boost our, not only our attendance level, but it's also going to boost us up to say they care. They have someone there that's been there and done that, that's able to tell me where I can go, where I can take my next steps, or being able to walk through it with me, and that's what I see. Being able to have someone that I can go to in the company, it boosted my self-esteem so much. Being a graduate of Southeastern Human Services and now trying to get my master's, I mean, I went from right here to probably taller than myself. I'm only 5 foot, so it's not much.
Didi, I appreciate what you said about how you took the opportunities that you saw and you ran with them. This wasn't something that we had actually planned on talking about, but I think this is something that's relevant to this topic. Didi, would you mind talking a little bit about the job situation while people are incarcerated? So the porter positions, the pay, how often you have to go to work, the skills that people have opportunities to develop, things like that.
Yeah, when I was developing my resume, there was a huge gap because I had been incarcerated many times. And so I was like, well, how can I fill this? And I was filling out a resume at Trade. And I was like, I have this huge gap. What am I going to do? You know, I work at a job for a year and then I'm incarcerated. Work at a job for 2 years and then I'm incarcerated for 5. What am I going to do? And they said, well, what did you do while you were incarcerated? I held jobs as what they call a porter. You clean your living units or you clean other units. I've had a job as what they call recycling. All I did was crush cans all day. However, you learn about not only how to crush cans, how to package them, how to take them to the compactor. People think that's nothing. That's stuff that you do at home. But people have been incarcerated for so many years. You know, these are not things that they've been at home doing, so they have no idea. People are working in kitchens. The pay starts out at $1.21 a day. These people are working 5 to 6 days a week. Sometimes, I'm saying sometimes because there might be a holiday and you're working 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day for $1.21 per day. Next raise, $2.25 per day. And a very few get the $3.78 per day. Now, they do have jobs, what they call the CSI, Cornhusker State Industries, and they are working for, I want to say it's 30 something cents per hour. And they're working 8 to 12 hours per day because they're making uniforms and stadium seats that we sit on when we go to the games, Cornhusker games. They're making curtains for sororities and fraternities. They're doing all these different things, but they're learning these skills and they're not telling them, hey, you know, you can use a skill. It's not the sewing skill, it's the working as a group, working as a team. I'm sewing on him, but the next person is putting on a zipper, but I'm preparing it for them. That's working as a team. That's teamwork. And that's what we tell them at Rise. Use that. You are teamwork, you're detail oriented. Because if that seam's not right, are you noticing it, or is the next person noticing and say, hey, you wrong seam? No, you notice it, you take it out, you put it back in. When you're cleaning, you're not just, I'm just going to wipe this table down and move on. No, you're cleaning because, you know, not only do you have to live there, but others have to live there. And with COVID, there's germs. You have people who are learning all these different, not just trades, but they're learning skill sets. They're learning how to protect their community. This is their community. They're learning how to protect their community. They're learning how to deal with chemicals. You have some people that are learning how to take care of others. I am so very proud to know some of these people and to be able to tell them, oh, I was just a porter. No, you were a sanitation worker or you were an environmental specialist because you learned how to take care of your environment and you learn how to keep it running. To me personally, the people who are incarcerated, they run that institution. They keep it clean, they feed them, they clothe them. The only thing they don't do is enforce the rules. And so we have to be able to tell them, these are the skill sets that you've learned. Yes, you made very little money. And you have some people that make they make $31 per month, right? But by the time, and they're there for 10 to 15 years, by the time they leave, they have thousands of dollars because they've learned how to budget off of that $31, you know? So I appreciate the fact that not only are they learning budgeting, they're learning this skill set of taking care of their community, but they're also learning that they're to be able to prepare for the future. And that's where we at Rise come in and say, hey, this is what you got to do to get to that next step. And by the time you get there, look at you, you're on your way.
Thanks, Didi. I appreciate you. So I want to move into a few more questions before we start taking questions from the chat, if that's okay. One of the things that I want to be really specific about, because I know that there are some people on this breakout session that actually do have the opportunity to make hiring decisions. So maybe we'll start with Jasmine on this one. What should an employer do if they find out that one of the applicants that they are interviewing has a felony on their record?
I think someone in the chat said it. I can't remember the name right now, but it's like, we can't out anyone. You're doggone right. You better, you can't. If you find out someone has a felony conviction or whatever on their background, it doesn't become water cooler conversation. If that person is already hired and you find out, if there's a process that is happening within HR, that's the process you do. If you find out before someone is hired, again, you have to look at your hiring process. Where are you asking this at in the process? Within the state of Nebraska, I think it was 2015, it became part of hiring processes for government entities to take that question off their applications, right? And we tried to get this passed in, I think, 2017 or 18 to get it off of the private employer applications. And it fell through because people were concerned. There are some employers who were concerned about, well, what does this look like? How Eduardo talked about, well, people find out that I'm hiring people with felony convictions. What does that look like for me? What is the insurance process? How is that going to impact my bottom line? You can do that on your own. You don't need a law. You don't need an ordinance to take it off of your application. You can do that within your own small p policy within your organization, your business, to take that off and say, hey, if you're looking at equal employment opportunity and their guidance, how long has it been since this person has had this conviction? Does it even pertain to the job that they are applying for? And overall, how does it impact the environment at your job, in a sense? So you can look at it from that standpoint and talk to that person in the interview. As Eduardo said, empathetic listeners in the interviewing process, because that's one thing that we also teach people at Rise when we're going through our program. What is your personal statement when you go into an interview and someone says, well, I see that you have a gap here in your history, or tell me about yourself? We have them talk about their incarceration from a standpoint that does not evoke pity, but says, hey, I made a mistake. This is what I have done to change myself and my circumstances, and this is where I'm going. And so as a society, as a community, we all have to start changing how we view people, how we think, how we do these processes, because if those chances aren't there, what are we doing with these programs to try and, we can't program our way out of it. We can give people the skill set, but until there's the opportunity and the environment to do it, it's for naught. So that's what employers can do. Start looking at those hiring processes, take out those barriers and say, okay, well, I found out this person has something on their background, but I sincerely believe they will do this job to the best of their ability. And you advocate for that person. If you're not the one that makes the final decision, you say, hey, let's start looking at how we're doing our hiring. There are jobs out there. There are so many jobs that are open right now. We don't have the ability to pass up on everybody who has something on their background, because at the end of the day, your work isn't going to get done. And if someone has that knowledge, that drive, who are we to say, I'm not going to give you that opportunity because you found out that one thing about them? Because you can hire someone who has that drive and the ability, but they just haven't gotten caught for what they do. So we have to look at it from that standpoint as well.
Thank you, Jasmine. As always, I'm so inspired by you. So the last question that I'm going to ask y'all before we move over to the chat really quickly is, I want to end on a positive note here. And Eduardo, I'll let you take this one first off. What are some of the advantages to hiring people who may have been incarcerated?
Oh, wow. So many. First, I want to put aside a quote here specifically for this. And it's from one of the employers we've made a pretty great relationship with and has a great population. Anyway, she said, the reentry population wants to contribute. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and they love being a part of a team. I enjoy the eagerness and drive to provide for themselves while performing the job with integrity. We try to find that in everyone we hire, and the fact that people with criminal backgrounds possess a large amount of those qualities makes for a hard time finding as much of that in people who don't have criminal backgrounds. Those qualities are critical to the growth of not only our company, but all companies within the community. You know, we're talking about people that want to provide for their families, you know, who want to make up for lost time, you know, who want to be a part of a community that accepts them. One of the advantages of hiring people with felony backgrounds is having employees who are ready to work and ready to do it well. Like Dee Dee said, you know, we're talking about individuals who have worked for very, very small amounts of money for years, and they can't wait to actually go to a job and earn a real wage and do something that's meaningful to them. And I had someone on my caseload just yesterday tell me that, and he was in tears as he's telling me this. He said, I can't tell you how much it meant to me to be able to buy my daughter a soda for the first time in 5 years. And for once, not having her having to come in here and buy me a soda. So imagine the amount of weight that this individual is carrying, ready to provide for his family. So there's a lot of heart focus there. I think, you know, if you're an employer and you know that you're providing these opportunities to this group of people, I mean, I know for me, I would imagine that that would be incredibly rewarding. You know, this group of people have understood what it's like to struggle and maintained a positive attitude through all of that. Every employer that I speak with, there is shifting away from what did you do in your past, and more towards, are you resilient? Are you a tenacious employee? Can you do the job? So we're seeing it shift that way, but that's one of the advantages is you're working with individuals who are ready to work and ready to do what's necessary and ready to provide for their families. And I know it's been said earlier, Jasmine hit on it, that, you know, it's an incredibly loyal group of individuals. You know, if you are providing this opportunity for these individuals, of course they're going to be loyal to you and want to do the job well, because they already don't have very many opportunities. So you have to take care of the ones you do get. Yeah, I'll end with that if anyone else has something to add to that.
I do want to add that when an employer hires someone with a background, they have a chance to be able to build. And I'm not saying that people come to them with no experience, because like I said, when they're incarcerated, they get so many life lessons and so many skills. However, you as an employer get to build the employee that you want, because they want to be able to show you, I can do this job, I'm teachable. And that is what employers want. I want someone, when I first started welding at the company I went to, they was like, well, when did you learn? You've been doing this for a long time. I said, no, 3 months. They were able to use me to say, this is how we like it. I did it that way. Okay, I want you to move to the next step, and this is how we like it. And I was able to do that. And I was able to take those same skills to my next job and build on it. You are able to build someone. That's why we call them builders. You are able to build onto their skill set so that they can take it to the next level. And they may just stay at your company, but they're able to take it to the next level. And pretty soon they're in management. Their background means nothing. Their background absolutely means nothing. You want the person, and sometimes you want them raw, because what if you get somebody that comes to your job that knows everything? What kind of person is that? That is not a very teachable person. You want someone that is teachable, someone that will learn, someone that will give to the team, someone that will build the group up. And to be able to build your group up and to build your company up, that's huge for an employer. So they're getting that experience of being teachable, but they're also getting someone that they can use to develop them. And And they're getting someone that's loyal, like Jasmine said, and Eduardo. You're getting a loyal person, and you're getting someone that will be dedicated to you, because you're teaching them and you're giving them a chance to give back to their community and to their family.
Jesse, I don't know if you want to go ahead and ask a few of the questions and open that up to panelists there.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So yes, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We can also do like open conversation and stuff too. But first and foremost, thank you guys so much for, telling your stories, telling the real life experience. There's tons of love in the chat, so you haven't got a chance to scroll through. Yeah, praise and glory for all of you. One of the questions that was posted is, in healthcare, sometimes hands are tied. The person may be qualified, but because the state will not clear them because of licensing restrictions, what are some things that can be done to address these issues on a state or governmental level?
Yes, that's where you come in with policy advocacy. Currently, well, I'll go back. I think it was 2018, former Senator Laura Ebke here in Nebraska got a bill passed where all licensure certification boards have to report into the legislature what their requirements or prohibitions are of how they're hiring and not hiring based on, because we see that a lot of people, we're bringing higher education into correctional facilities. We're promoting second chance Pell Grants, and they're getting the skill set right, but then there's these boards that block it. So we're trying to figure out what are all these restrictions that are being placed on there. And next week, October 29th, there's going to be an interim hearing that looks at the impact on marginalized populations. So basically people with criminal histories, and how these licensures and these restrictions are impacting people and their growth opportunities when it comes to careers, when it comes to higher education. And a lot of people spending a lot of money because they don't know that these boards have these restrictions. So that's where we start. If you have any information, if you have stories of people, you can contact me at jharris@csrise.org. We are taking that information down to the legislature next week. And that's where it starts. We have Platt Institute, we have the County Council on State Governments who is involved, Nebraska Appleseed. There's a lot of us, ACLU, there's a lot of us who are trying to push for this. And we need real life stories. We need people who have experienced this, so that way we can start pushing our government to make changes where it needs to happen. Because a lot of times it's just basically the blanketed policies that people have that we're not going to hire someone with a criminal history. And so we have to start showing up and letting them know where these barriers are, so that way we can get all of that changed.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, that email's in the chat. So yeah, definitely reach out and share those stories.
I just wanted to add a little bit. I don't know much about the policy. I learned from Jasmine. I learned a lot from Jasmine. But I do want to tell people in the healthcare field that there are people that are inside of the facilities that are learning to be CNAs, certified nursing assistants. They're learning these things, and they're learning them while they're in there, and they're taking care of the elderly, people with COVID, people who are sick with, different types of ailments, cancers and so forth. And they're learning this and they're becoming certified, but when they come out, they can't use it. So that's just another reason. I just wanted to add that in there, Jasmine, because that's another reason for them to work with Jasmine and to talk to the legislature, so that they'll be able to use this skill set to come out to, they're learning this stuff in there and they're becoming certified, and then they realize I can't use this when I get out because they won't let me. So that's just one other reason.
Thank you. Now, I realize this may still be fresh, but what has the impact of the recent revelation of the Nike executive, Larry Miller, has on this space? I mean, is it a move in the right direction? But what, if any, has there been experience with this thus far?
So I had to look this up because I haven't been watching news. I'm bad. After running for office this year, I kind of took a seat on everything. And I don't know if anyone else from the crew has seen or heard this. So Larry Miller, the Nike exec, just admitted that at the age of 16, he had murdered someone. And this is the top exec at Nike. This was back in 1965. At Rise, we don't put a limit on who we work with. We work with people who are lifers, which means they have done something that has made it impossible for them to come home, which a lot of times is murders. We work with people who have sexual offenses. At the end of the day, 90% of people who are incarcerated are coming home. They're gonna have to do something. And what we found out a few years ago, your brain isn't actually developed until you're about 25 years old. So at the age of 16, when you are a juvenile making decisions that could change the trajectory of your whole life, we have to start looking at how are we sending these youth, these young adults through the justice system, because their brain wasn't developed enough to make an adult decision that happened. Yes, they made a bad decision. Yes, we need to look at what does rehabilitation look like. A lot of our system isn't set up for rehabilitation. It's set up for warehousing. And we have to start pushing for that to happen as well. Actual rehabilitation, actual programs that work. What are we doing in the community around prevention? So for me, when I see that about Larry Miller, I just think of that's an example of what Second Chances does, because I'm quite sure that wasn't quiet. It's kept. It was a murder that happened. So we have to start looking inward at ourselves and what are our restorative justice practices. That is what's going to get us out of this mass incarceration system that we're in. If we want to change how we do things instead of punishment, what is the restorative process that we're taking to ensure that people are taking accountability, but also restoring and rehabilitating? And sometimes I say it's not even rehabilitation, it's just habilitation, because some people aren't even at a level of returning to. They never had that opportunity to be there to begin with. Sorry, anybody else?
I just want people to know that with Second Chance Hiring, you have such an opportunity to be able to build your community so that it is contributing, so that it is forthcoming, and so that it is just welcoming for everyone. And when a person is away and they are incarcerated, that is not their punishment. And so when they come out, you continue what you, well, I shouldn't say you, but society tries to continue what they think is a punishment, not hiring them, outing them, discriminating against them because of their felony. That's not their punishment. The incarceration wasn't their punishment. Them being out is not for them to continue to be punished. Their punishment was what they did, their crime. When they are there, that is the time for their rehabilitation. So these are different people, whether it be 1 year, 10 years, or 20 years. These are different people. They are different ages now. They have learned so many different tools and so many different skills. Now it is time as a community that we come together and we try to build them up. And so that we show them that, hey, this is what I'm doing to be a part of my community. You're welcome to be a part of it. And you're welcome to be able to contribute. And you're welcome to be able to bring your family. And hey, maybe I can network with you. So that is the time for us to build them up. It's not to continue what we think is punishment. They got their punishment years ago. While they were gone, they got nothing but rehabilitation. Thanks.
Thank you. We do have more questions, but we're running out of time. I apologize for those questions we weren't able to get to, but please feel free to reach out to the Hoove app or LinkedIn or emails and stuff and continue this conversation. But I'll turn it over to our session facilitator. Thank you. Oh, the infamous, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. I apologize. I'm just going right away. I was really excited and encouraged with that dialogue. But please help me in giving our panel a round of applause. I was definitely inspired by everything that was said, and I hope we can all get involved and take something back. Next up, there is a quick break before heading to the closing session with keynote speaker Soraya Simile. During this session, we'll be drawing the final early login contest winners, and one individual will receive a round-trip domestic flight courtesy of our official airline sponsor, Southwest Airlines. You must be present to win the flight. Take this time to engage in discussion boards, message with other attendees, or check out our sponsors and exhibitor profiles. All of this can be done within Whova web platform or mobile app. Thanks to all, and have a great rest of your day. Okay.